When it comes to nutrition, it's no big stretch to say the medical education system is broken. The runaway global pandemic of chronic lifestyle diseases confirms that sad fact. Knowledge gaps exist because the stewards of the system fail to prioritize nutrition training. In recent episodes of The Big Middle, we've met founders and ambassadors of the Public Health Collaboration. That's a UK charity. Now we're going to learn about South Africa's Nutrition Network, part of the Noakes Foundation of celebrated sports scientist Prof Tim Noakes. Jayne Bullen is joining me from the network's HQ in the paradise that is Cape Town. Hello, Jayne.
Good afternoon. Lovely to be here with you today, Susan.
Yeah, wonderful to see you. And how's the weather in Cape Town? I understand you've had this exceptional Siberian cold front.
Yeah, well, it's like so freezing that I'm in a short sleeve jacket, I mean, it's the coldest we get around here. So we'll be on the beach tomorrow, midwinter.
So it's improved from the last couple of weeks, yeah? Because there was snow on the ground, not just the mountain.
Yes, it was true, actually. We've forgotten that already and been up the mountain. But we haven't, it's not been too bad. It's been a good winter. We just had a couple of cold days at one point.
Yeah. Now, before we dig into how you're closing those medical system education gaps, Jayne, let's say hello to two Nutrition Network graduates that we're going to hear from in a bit. Dr. Andrew Oswari, you're with us from New Jersey. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And where are you in New Jersey?
My practice is in Morristown, New Jersey. It's about 30 minutes east of Philadelphia and about an hour south of New York City.
Oh, fantastic. Well, hang tight. And we'll also introduce Frank Zweedijk. You are where in the Netherlands, Frank?
Way down in south in Middelburg. That's probably 1 hour drive from Rotterdam and just 45 minutes from Antwerp. So if you ever want to go and shop, you can go there, no problem.
Okay. Or look at the North Sea and see all the big boats.
That's better, I think, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am keen to hear about your motivations and your experiences, but we're going to set that aside for a minute because, Jayne, let's go to you first. Tell us all about what the Nutrition Network is doing.
So we educate medical professionals and more recently coaches in how to change their practice from a very kind of traditional allopathic approach to a more integrated approach that includes therapeutic carbohydrate restriction as the premise for the treatment of multiple chronic diseases.
And how many courses do you offer? And I want to know about the accreditation as well. I mean, how do you certify the graduates? How do they get something that means something in the wider world?
Yeah, so we started in 2018 with just one single professional training in low carbohydrate treatment of disease, it was originally called. And it was really, we thought that that would be it. But of course, what we identified very quickly was that there was a huge lot of other things that needed to be plugged into that to actually take practitioners from the point that they were at then to the point that these two amazing professionals that we've got here with us today are at, where we really know for sure that we can call them up to do a podcast, we can ask them to do a lecture, we can refer patients to them, and we know that they actually know the science. And that's, of course, that being said, doesn't mean that there weren't people out there that knew the science already, but there wasn't a way to regulate and understand that for sure. So we had a lot of people out in the industry that were calling themselves low carbohydrate practitioners and that weren't, myself having gone to many of those people over the years.
Yeah, so you get a real scientific grounding then. You give that over how many hours, let's say, we've got you two graduates here, Andrew and Frank. Over how many hours is the course that you guys took, Jayne? How is that sort of the flagship course for health practitioners that are seeing patients on a daily basis?
So what do you guys think? You'll have to tell me. I know it's a lot more than you originally thought you'd spend on it.
How many hours was it, Andrew?
I don't know if I've ever quantified it, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. There are the videos, there are the interpersonal meetings that we have with our mentors. There are the group meetings that we have together. And there is reading on your own. There's developing a way of reading scientific research papers and explaining what we discussed it. So I never even talked about the hours, but it was pretty intense.
And is it all online? And you said there that there's some one-on-one, but also group sessions, I imagine.
There were, it started off the week with a lecture with one of the amazing teachers at our nutrition network. As a group, we had open discussions there. That was probably a couple hours. Then there were forums that we had to answer questions with, and they all had to be true citations. So they weren't just off the top of our head or our feeling or options. It was scientifically grounded. And that took quite a bit of time.
So outside of your office hours in New Jersey, when you're seeing patients, were you, just mainlining all these medical abstracts late at night to gen up for your next module?
Exactly.
I just want to say there as well that it's an incredible accomplishment actually to have got to that point, because we have, I think there are about 18 trainings now, and you have to have done probably almost all of them to actually get to the point to do the training that Frank and Andrew did. Those of which are obviously shorter and online and have different formats, but the actual commitment that you make to do the certification is another level of intense focus, commitment, and actual dedication, I would almost call it, or that's what I've been told it was from the participants.
Right. And I looked at the curriculum and the various modules, and there's an ethics course as well, which I would have even thought was something that everyone would have to learn.
Well, I think we should have more ethics. I think it's underrated, and it's probably the most important training. So the Society for Metabolic Healthcare Professionals in the US has made that their core training. So you can't certify as an SMHP graduate without doing that particular ethics module. Why? Because it's so embedded in the way that we do things, and we're seeing professionals that just can't communicate the work that they're doing because they are absolutely terrified that they're being unethical by telling their patients to change their diet.
Yes, of course. How short-sighted of me to think that wasn't, one of the premier modules, because it's true. Anyone who sticks their head above the parapet and goes against the mainstream calories in, calories out, the energy balance model of nutrition, and goes for the carbohydrate insulin model, I mean, they just get criticized non-stop. I mean, everybody starts screaming at them. And I can imagine if they're, if you're running a business and you're 20 years down the line, 25 years down the line, you've got loads of patients and a golden plated reputation, it's hard to prepare yourself to withstand that sort of pressure.
But what was beautiful, what I thought of the ethics course that you hear there, that when you do not give your patients the truth, that's very unethical. So for me, this ethical course was just more making for me clear that it's so important to keep on giving this message, as long as you provide yourself from everything you say that is backed up by science. And I think the message that allopathic medicine is telling is very unethical. So we can turn it around and maybe ask them the question, are you practicing ethically?
Right. And so you explain everything to your patients. And I should say, Frank, I haven't properly introduced you yet and contextualized you. You're an osteopath. You've been an osteopath for 30 years in the Netherlands. Years, yeah. And how does low carb nutrition as a therapeutic tool have an impact on your patients? Because I think osteopath, okay, that's joint pain. So tell me about some of the successes you've had with your patients.
I was my first patient. So always when you come to low carb, many people come there because of their own personal story. And for me, I had many joint problems, and they were cured when I reduced my grains and my carbs. And when I went into a ketogenic state, went below 20 grams, real wondrous things happened. So that for me was the challenge to start the Nutrition Network education and know more about these things. And now we're 2.5 years later, and I share this story with my patients. And I see it's very difficult to change behavior in patients, but when they do change, their successes are enormous, and especially everything that's correlated to inflammation will change when you go on a ketogenic diet. And I think Andrew can agree with that, going from joint pains to diabetes, things going up in the brain like epilepsy or Parkinson's disease. All these kind of things will tremendously change when you put them on a ketogenic diet.
Well, even just getting rid of the grains is an initial first step. I mean, that's huge. I know at menopause, I got Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And, I start digging around because my general practitioner in Switzerland didn't tell me anything beyond, oh, we'll need to keep an eye on that. So, of course, I went deep diving into Dr. Google, etc., and learned give up gluten. And that meant get rid of all the grains. And it was amazing how I watched the antibodies go down and down and down. So it's really good. Now, Dr. Andrew Oswari, Andrew, you actually had a shock. You had been doing everything, like so many people, right, according to the standard American dietary guidelines, and you got hit with diabetes. Tell us your story.
I've always been obese, even when I was a child. And I ended up in medical school at Loma Linda, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventists. And we probably had a little bit more nutrition courses than other med schools, maybe half a day, from what I remember. And it was
half a day in 4 years or 6 years. That was it.
Yeah, which is, I think, pretty good. but I was plant-based mostly my entire life, and it actually was teaching my patients plant-based diets. And but I've always rode that roller coaster of weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain. And in January of 2019, my A1C was 7.4, which is diabetic. And I was shocked. And it was from a patient that actually showed me, actually, she said she was doing keto. So then I did the same thing with you. I did the deep dive with Dr. Google and Facebook, joined some groups and learned the ketogenic diet. And within 2 weeks, I just felt tremendously better. My knee pains, my back pain, my brain fog, my irritability, my reflux, my irritable bowel disease, things that I thought I was just going to live with my entire life was literally gone.
That's such a laundry list of symptoms that nobody wants. And are you still ketogenic, strictly 20 grams and under for, non-starchy carbs?
I'm not, I'm definitely low carb, without a doubt, low carb. I don't consider myself ketogenic, even though I know that I have ketones, because I'm one of the few that can still taste it. But I do a lot of fasting. I do low carb. I just don't add any additional fats.
And I suppose your long-term patients, it's amazing for them to see the metamorphosis of you. I mean, you're your best advertisement for what you're doing now with your patients, what you're offering them as an option.
I love what we do. I love what I learned. After those 2 weeks, when things went away, I knew there was something real. And that's when I came upon Nutrition Network. And I have done every single course that they've done, except the newest one, but I'm going to get there. When the chance to become certified came up, it wasn't about the certification. It was about gaining more knowledge, because I knew that it worked in my life and I needed to know why it worked in my life.
Right. And so you went to the Nutrition Network, which, Jayne, does Prof Noakes actually teach some of the courses?
I think almost all of our courses have got at least 1 or 2 lectures from him. Yes, absolutely. Right. He's still, his body of knowledge and his understanding of this work is so incredibly well researched that he's an invaluable lecturer on most of our trainings.
And I suppose you've only got, 5-star practitioners who are able to give these lectures. You vet them and they're there. And so, Andrew and Frank, you can trust that you're getting the leading edge of the science as it stands now.
Absolutely. In fact, when we got into the meetings, it was almost like we were starstruck, because we were sitting there speaking with the Professor Tim Noakes, and Dr. Wellington and Dr. Kaji and Tamsin. I mean, the list goes on and on.
I don't know if you can see, my cat has decided he wants a cameo in this Zoom. It's meant
So
to be
adorable.
four people in the Zoom, but you know, he is awfully pretty. So yeah, you're such a
So
handsome boy, Arlo, and he wants to hang out. So there's no way. Arlo, say hello. Say hello to your adoring public. Anyway, Jayne, I'm not sure. I think we just glossed over the certification. Are you affiliated with a medical school or not at all? And how do you win the certification? What's the process there?
So we are a training body of our own entity. We left the medical department at the university that Prof Noakes has been at for 40 years, a couple of years ago, because we couldn't get things done in a way that really supported the philosophy that we were working with. We kept getting stuck on the guideline. Are you following guidelines? Are you following guidelines? Are you following the food pyramid that has the massive chunk of carbohydrates at the bottom? Of course, there were other reasons too, but when Prof Noakes retired, we made a decision to actually move our research to other universities, to do new innovative things with the way that we were operating. And we've never looked back. There was a point where we said, okay, in a couple of years, we'll probably go affiliate with a bigger international university and accredit our trainings through that. But unfortunately, we haven't, or fortunately, we haven't needed to or wanted at this point, and our students haven't wanted us to. So we've carried on training, and we have all of our courses have CPD and CME credits attached to them.
CPD,
and that's the way we've approached it. Continued
CPD?
Professional development.
Great. Okay.
And
You
in
can
the
see I've never
US,
had any of
it's
that.
called
I didn't recognize the acronym. So the thing is, it would almost be a drag on your credibility if you latched on to a medical school that is still being dogmatic about what it teaches and is still giving that half day maximum of nutritional training for the doctors of today and tomorrow.
Yeah, so we've had quite a number of medical schools come to us and use parts of our curriculum. There's an amazing Dr. Mark Cucizella in the States. He's running some actual programs through his university-based hospital where all of the doctors and locums that are there are doing our trainings. But again, they've kind of come to us and said, can we use this? Can we use that? Can you come and share with us a summary of what you're doing? And then we find a lot of the students come and do our trainings and add it on, but it's not part of their curriculum at the moment. And we are not going to try and change that wheel. We're not going to go kind of knocking at universities, telling them they should be changing their curriculum. We're waiting for students who inevitably do come to them or come to us and say, I need this, we need this, how can we integrate it?
Isn't this fantastic? It's part of that. Yeah, the tide is really turning because it's getting more and more and more momentum. And we saw that amazing paper yesterday from David Ludwig and 16 other authors, including Gary Taubes. And I mean, the momentum is astonishing. It's almost blinding. More and more and more evidence. We've got Dr. David Unwin crunching the numbers from his clinical successes. I mean, it's now moving at a pace that is hard to deny, isn't it?
And I think that's the incredible thing about this movement or revolution, like it used to be called in South Africa, is that patients are turning the wheel, they're turning the tide. Like the fact that Andrew changed his diet and lifestyle because one of his patients taught it to him is astounding. And that's one of the problems that medicine is seeing now, is that doctors are losing patients because they are doing different things and they are being forced to change because of it. So it's a real grassroots revolution, and that's why we are based in South Africa. That's why we come from South Africa. That's why our offices are still here, is because we tend to do these things in ways that are unusual, grassroots, bottoms up. It's a different way of approaching things here, and it's much easier to innovate. So we went ahead and created this because there was nothing here. And because, very much for my own journey, I've had insulin resistance since I was 21. I went to doctors, I went to cardiologists, I went to people for advice, and they were just telling me the same story. And I was so sick of it, as most patients are. They become angry, and then when you realize how you've been lied to and how the information that you've been given by your trusted medical professionals has made you sicker over decades, you become rebellious. You become angry. You want to change things,
No, absolutely. And I mean, I've experienced that as well. You're just dismissed and patronized, and you say, but I heard and I know and I've read the paper on, the literature says otherwise. Why aren't you across this? And they look at you like, you're not a doctor. And yeah, it just gets ridiculous. And you know, it's the guilt. You are not compliant, you're not listening. And you think, well, yeah, I stopped listening years ago because you're just dishing rubbish. So why would I listen to you when you're so far behind the game? Now, I wonder, Andrew, if I can go back to you. You are one of only two, I read, low carb, using low carb nutrition as a therapeutic tool in the state of New Jersey. It's still just the two of you then?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I mean, at least we're registered. I don't know. I'm sure there's other folks. I mean, it's hard not to, like you said, the tide is changing. So I'm sure folks are starting to latch on pretty easily.
Have other doctors approached you though and said, look, you took that course. What do you think? Should I take it?
I have not yet.
And what about you, Frank?
No, in the Netherlands, I think we're getting on very good, because I think we now have about 10 people. We're all coming together and trying to make a plan together for the future of spreading the low carb message in the Netherlands and Belgium. And I think there's more people coming as a student from Nutrition Network and making this group bigger. So I think we have some momentum here in the Netherlands, and I'm amazed by the story of Andrew. And in his state, there are only 2 people you know of that are busy doing the low carb thing. It's amazing.
In the Garden State of New Jersey, I read that, and if that still holds true, but as you say, Andrew, others might have climbed on board in different ways, because like the public health collaboration, like via Diet Doctor with Dr. David Unwin, and Dr. David Unwin and his wife do workshops with their patients. And, you know, there are things happening, bottom-up things happening all over the world, which reminds me, Jayne, I wanted to ask you, you know, we've got a graduate from the United States, a graduate from the Netherlands. How many countries are represented, and how many graduates have you had since 2018 when you set up the network?
So when we created this training, we modeled it on the vision and the hope that we would train 30 people in year 1, which would make us reach us that kind of break-even point. We were committed to finding 30 pioneers. And in our first week that we launched it, we had hundreds and hundreds of applicants. And we had no idea that there were so many people that were even interested. And it was such a shock. So that was when we realized, okay, there are people out there, you know, a lot of people are hiding under the carpet. They do these trainings. Only under 10% of the people that have done our trainings are prepared to list themselves as low carb practitioners. We've had just close on 6,000 doctors that have done our trainings in 93 countries. And it's growing constantly from there. So it's a huge global movement. Don't be fooled and think that you're out there alone now. And I'm saying this to all of our practitioners that are listening to this interview. You may feel like you're sitting alone in the northwest corner of Canada, practicing on your own, but I promise you, there are many others that have either done our courses or that are actually understanding and integrating this philosophy deeply into their practices now.
That's amazing. So 6,000 across 93 countries. And it's now it's only for healthcare professionals. You have to be an MD or an osteopath, or, I mean, if I wanted to do it tomorrow, would there be something for me? You know, I've got a Bachelor of Journalism and International Relations, but a huge interest in this.
So in year 1, we made it only for medical professionals. They had to be kind of registered with their local authority and have a practice number. But the number of applicants and people that came to us and said, why can't I do this? It's not fair. I've got 20 years of experience as a coach. So over time, we built what we now call the advisor training, which is for people that are absolutely anyone that's a layperson can do it. So we have a lot of personal trainers, coaches, people that work in policy, people that work in food industries, people that work in government that have done it. And then from there, of course, they can do the slightly more scientific advanced trainings, but what they can't do is certify in the same way that Frank and Andrew have. There's a path for medical professionals, and we've more recently created a path for coaches. Our first coach training starts in 2 weeks' time, which will be the pilot for coaches only that have
fantastic.
done all of the qualifications.
And I mean, how many modules and how long will that course be, over how many weeks? I mean, I'm always interested in the details because I'd love to take it.
So it's a 3-month training that is going to be intense, very similar to the training that Frank and Andrew have done in the medical area. And it's going to be a very, very intense 3-month journey for the people that have committed to it.
And what's the ultimate goal for the Nutrition Network? I mean, when you're future spinning and planning and, technicolor dreaming about where you take this, you've already taken it so far without, let's be honest, without even trying beyond offering it to the world. What's the goal?
We have always believed that we're going to change medicine around the world, one practitioner at a time. So to some extent, we are sitting here, the three of us. So Andrew and Frank, the fact that you're on this podcast and that we're talking together as a team means that we have reached a large part of our goal, which is that we're a network. We are not sitting alone in Cape Town, South Africa, churning out information in a one-sided direction. It takes every single aspect of society to change the problem that we're in with chronic health and disease in the world. And we know that. I mean, we know it's not just going to be one doctor in New Jersey and one osteopath in the Netherlands that is going to change this. We know that it's every single person's wallet and how they decide to shop and what they spend their money on. And it's every kind of retail outlet, it's so integrated, what we eat and the way that the situation we've landed up in as collectively as human beings because of the poor diet and health is something we're all going to have to change. So it's a huge lofty goal, but we believe that medicine is changing through the practitioners that we've started to train, and we are going to keep going in that direction for as long as it takes.
As you say, one practitioner at a time. Now, final question in turn to all three of you. Is there one pithy message that you would like to shout out from the rooftops to everyone in the world about disease prevention and mitigation through real food, and particularly easing up on the carbs if you're eating a whole lot of garbage on a daily basis and ultra processed foods and all of that? Andrew, do you want to go first?
Sure. I've been practicing for 20 years, and the majority of the stuff that I've taught was to treat things when it's too late. And we absolutely have a armament to treat things before they become too late. And I see every single patient that I see, no matter what they come in with, whether it's pain, psychiatric, if it's diabetes, whatever it is, we can change things through a low-carb approach. And I truly believe that. And that's my goal.
What about you, Frank?
I totally agree with what Andrew said, and I would like to add that we can use the low-carb diet not always as a strict lifestyle, but as a tool to reach the most important thing for me, to be metabolically flexible. Like what Andrew said, that when you go through a period of ketogenic diet and you address all your hormonal disbalance, then you can return to some carbs and you can deal with that without any problems. So realize that you as a man or a woman are part of this earth. So you have to eat everything that comes of this earth, and you have to live with the rhythm of the earth as well. And that's not linear, eating 3 or 6 times a day, but sometimes skip a day and use some forms of fasting. And I think when you do that, you can maintain your metabolic flexibility and you can compress your mobility curve, like Prof Noakes said beautifully, and you can reach your 80s being very vital and very healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I've interviewed him 3 times, and the 2 where we sat down in Cape Town, just down from his house, at his favorite restaurant. He said, Susan, for 30 years, I was pre-diabetic and did not know it. Nobody tested for it. So I was a ticking time bomb before I discovered that I could control my cravings for carbohydrates by eliminating them, or pretty much, minimizing them to below 20 grams, and all of the other things. And, maximizing sleep and all of the other lifestyle tools that we pull in order to optimize our health. Final from the rooftops message from you, Jayne. What would yours be?
2 words: eat better. That's it.
That's it.
And I really mean that to parents. Get your kids to eat better. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it better. Baby steps, baby steps. That's the way.
Oh, fantastic. Well, and I'm going to give you a last reference from the founder of the Nutrition Network, a quote from Prof Tim Noakes during my first interview with him under that lovely canopy down the road from his place. He said, "Hunger is what makes us fat. Satiety is key, and getting off the carb roller coaster delivers it." And I think we can all attest to that, restricted windows for eating, and really, it doesn't mean you can never have a bite of carrot cake again, but, on a daily basis, your default mode, the programming has changed, and you're minimizing the carbs that you ingest.
Absolutely.
Totally agree.
Well, that's it. There was no question in that, just sort of a statement. So we're all on the same page. And thank you so much, all of you, for coming on. Happy trails as you go, and you're implementing what you've learned.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Susan.
Thank you. Well, that's
Three,
it
two,
until the
one.
next one. Susan Flory wishing you well, and thank you for listening and for watching. And please, if you want to help me get the big middle in more ears and eyes, I would be grateful if you can nudge those Apple Podcast algorithms by leaving a review, of the 5-star kind. I would really appreciate that, because I don't often pitch for reviews, but apparently they really do help draw attention to the podcast. So thank you so much. Ciao for now. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.